Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is Monday, which can mean only one thing. It is the Online Darts Live Lounge with me, Phill Bars. Today, we are joined by Boise, and Dan is in the hot seat because it's someone's birthday and he's having a day off. Absolutely outrageous, but happy birthday, God. Boys, good evening.
Evening, mate.
Good evening.
Dan, on to the live lounge for the night.
Yeah, it's nice to be. It's ages since I've done one of these. It's been a while since I've done a Fallout bar. I did one the other week. It's even longer since I've done a live lounge. So very nice to be back in a very exciting week on Planet Darts.
It's never a dull moment on Planet Darts. We've got plenty to talk you through today. Chris Murphy will be joining us around 8:30-ish, so it's good to get Murph's thoughts on everything as well. And the chat room is rammed as always. It's good to have you all along. Come and say hi. Remember, we don't bite. And of course, make sure you drop us a like and subscribe to Online Darts. We're almost there. We're almost at that magical 20k mark. So again, turn notifications on to make sure you know when we are there. But it's already rammed in the chat room, which is absolutely amazing. Boys, I suppose we'll start at Q-School. It's any logical place to start. A grueling week. We have 32 new-ish PDC tour card holders. Some handed it back only for a week and got it back again. But before we dive into it, we'll start with you, Dan. Overriding thoughts of Q-School.
I think, personally, I'm not particularly surprised. Like sometime like last year, we had a few big shocks, had some really interesting twists and turns. I think it generally went the way I expected it to. Maybe not every single day, but certainly over the course of the tournament. You see one or two slight surprises. Jelle Klaasen, bit of a surprise, and a couple of others. But generally, I thought it was fairly sort of steady away, really.
For you, Boise?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree on that one. I think the more some of the names that come through, that's the UK. I was a bit more surprised with the odd one or two, but the general feel of who come through wasn't a massive surprise. And I think the feel of that come from stage one. There wasn't massive names in the names that were in stage one who we expected to get through. The majority got through that sort of field. Some beat in the last day. But got through that sort of field, and then moving into stage two, it was everything we sort of expect from Q-School. It was absolutely manic. There was people missing out by just one leg when it comes to that sort of final day. It sort of threw up everything that we expected from it. And well done to yourself, Phill, and everyone who streamed the Q-School, because what an effort it was from, well, not just our team, I guess, but from everyone who was in the chat room to speaking to you at the weekend. The numbers were just ridiculous for the week, and it sort of summed up what a week we had at Q-School.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I'm just looking at it now. From the UK one, the one big admission, the one that I thought would have a great Q-School and missed out, James Richardson. That's the one standout name that leaps out of everyone to me that didn't make it through stage one. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's because of, I wouldn't say it's a lot of what we're talking about these on is what we've seen in events, and maybe for James Richardson, it was a lot of what he's done on the live league. We've seen him a lot of times on there firing in 9 darters, getting to a lot of finals day. We've seen him in WDF events doing quite far. So
his form coming into it in the amount he'd played, there's some names who we hadn't seen as much as. So yeah, it was a surprise not to see, but I'm sure as for a lot of the players who just missed out, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for the players this year, and there's less worry about the players who missed out than what there was for the players who missed out 12 months ago at Q-School.
Yeah, it's an interesting couple of ones in Europe as well, like Nico Springer that had qualified for round 2 already, says, I don't really want to play on the tour, rocks up, plays one day of stage 1 to get his points and goes home. That was an interesting one.
Go on, Dan.
Sorry, I'm struggling a bit for connectivity. I think I'm just back in, but I missed everything that was just said. Sorry. I'm really I'm trying to reset some bits and pieces here.
Dan, are you around Dobbs House? Just to ask. Because if there's one person who's going to have a problem, it's Dobb, and now it's his replacement who's having the same problem. Well done. Well done.
He's lent me his laptop for the live round.
Yeah, Phil, I guess on that point with Nico, I guess it's just he had his mindset that he wasn't going to be able to commit to the tour. And to be honest, I would rather see someone do that than what we've seen where people have done on and won the tour card and then not entered any of the tournaments. So I guess the flip side, he's made that decision quite early on. That he just wants to play on in the Euro event qualifiers and all those. So, you know, I'm happier with that than I am seeing someone that card and not enter the competitions.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Again, in the chat room, what do you think? Anyone that missed out getting to stage 2 that was a complete shock for you? Let us know. Say James Richardson, the obvious one, but let us know in the chat room. A few. Ben Robb made such a heroic dash on the last day, almost made it, which will be good. Don't worry, we have got some Premier League chat later on. Don't you fear on that one. Everyone's had time to dissect and get on board with what they think. So that'll be interesting. But moving on, we'll start with how EU ended up with the tour cards and everything like that. Winners, Jose Justicia, Brian Roman, Luke Peters, and Christoph Kachuk. Couple of interesting ones. We'll do the winners first of all. Look, Jose Justicia was sensational from stage 1 into stage 2. Brian Roman, when he was good, he was very good, but dodged a few bullets with a couple of dodgy averages. Luke Peters did nothing for 2 days and then was sensational. And Kachuk on the last day in Europe. That sums up the winners' past, boys. Do we disagree?
No, it's probably hard to disagree with that, mate.
Yeah, it was a bit. I mean, the last day made for a bit exciting. Just with Kachuk, he sort of came from nowhere. Not in the sense that I think he was sort of one of my favourites to get through at the beginning, but by the final day, it looked a bit done and dusted for him. So that one was a bit of a surprise, just based on the form for the 3 days before. But yeah, I think you've got it nailed there, Phil.
Yeah, it was interesting that Luke Peters had so much promise because the way he filled in on the Pro Tour last year, played some really good stuff. And after 2 days, there were a lot of people going, what's going on here? Can Luke Peters turn up, please? Because he's so much potential. But the day he won, he was brilliant.
Yeah, he was brilliant to come through on that one. And there was question marks, and there was those question marks like Dan alluded to at the start with other players like Jelle and those. So, and we've seen it. There's 2 ways to qualify through Q-School. There's either turn up and have an outstanding sort of day, or build your points up throughout the week. And I think with Luke Peters, because of the first start, it was just turning up and making sure we'd done enough on that 3rd day to secure his spot. I'll put my teeth back in. Looking
at the order of merit, there's so many stories at the top and at the bottom. We'll go to the top first of all. Look, the top 3 in Mario van der Bodengard, Jules van Dongen and Kevin Dowitz were nothing short of sensational over the whole format. Literally, they blitzed everyone, how Super Mario has not won one of the days is still one of life's biggest mysteries.
You can just see on that leg difference as well, Phill, like just how consistent and how outrageous is some of his performances were. Plus 37 leg difference. And you can see, the different 12 legs ahead of the guy in second place is a monster score, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's as good as an extra point is the thing. That's just absolutely colossus. But we saw his manager talk about it on Twitter and Facebook. The last 2 hours, if you were Roby John's family or just a pure fan of Roby John, must have been absolute hell.
Yeah. For anyone who was in that sort of bunch, whether it be EU or UK, it's an horrible time, isn't it? When you're relying on other stores or you're looking elsewhere, it's just completely horrible. When it works in, obviously, when it works in your favour, as much as the 2 hours have been held, you've got that exterior at the end of it. And for Roby John, for me, he's one who, out of that list, he's one of the entries for a year. He's one I did want to see better Tour Card this year. So I am happy he made it through, but I was very surprised to see him make it through in that way with that nervous wait.
Oh, completely. The way it worked out on that final day where he was out and the semi-finalist, it was just like, this could be an absolute disaster for him. But he got there in the end, which was the important thing. But just scrolling down, obviously you can't see it on the screen, but Christian Kiss, Ryan De Breeder, Fabian Schmalzer just missing out. Thibaut Tricol, I fancied to get a card. But Dan, where does Jelle Klaasen's career go from here? Because in terms of Q-School, this was a disaster.
Well, I think, what's that? 14 years? I think he's had a card for. First time he's dropped out.
Yeah.
I think he might have felt really, really lucky in that, let's be honest, if there is a time to lose your card and still earn an income from darts, it's now. Like probably this next year coming has got to be the most lucrative year with the most opportunities ever for a non-card holding professional darts player. So he might have felt really lucky in that he can probably keep busy this year, keep himself on social media, keep himself being talked about, keep himself popping up on the internet and sort of winning bits and pieces here and there to either earn a card in one of the other ways that are, open to folk to earn a card that isn't Q-School, or at least certainly put himself in a position to come back pretty strong next year. I mean, in one sense, a bit of a disaster for him, but I think if you are going to lose your card, this is probably the best year to do it.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree. And just looking at Europe, people are touching on it in the chat room as well. The different flags that we've got now, we've got the Belgians are flying on tour now. More Spaniards as well. And there was a real feel around Q-School. See plenty of Italian flags, Polish, Czech, Croatian. There was a real feel, Boise, that darts is really going deep into Europe now.
Yeah, and it's great from both sides. From a player point of view, there's names now that you're looking at, and for the majority of those countries who are going to be on tour. So when you're following the sport, there's names you can look at and you can inspire to go to. And from a PDC point of view, the amount of countries that opens up for Euro tours that they've potentially not done to, or World Series events, depending on where we're looking to expand to this year, next year, and the year after. For both sides, it's just brilliant to see the amount of countries that are entering for these competitions. Not just that, the amount that are qualifying as well. It opens up a lot more opportunities for these countries.
Yeah, Robert says, is Van Dongen from the USA or the Netherlands? America. Represents America, based over in America. Andrew says the Germans had a shocking week overall. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
In terms of Germany, of the dominant force that it's been on the Euro Tour and everything like that, yeah, really disappointing for them. I think it was I'm not sure if it was Andrew or there was someone in the chat room. It might have been Philip, that massive friend of the show came up with the German stat, and there was a lot of disappointed German fans more than anything, Boise, as well.
Yeah, there was, but once then to that Phill, it's a disappointing Q-School for Germany. However, they've built up such a good reputation, the players that they've already got on the tour, that they'll come back, and I think they'll come back stronger maybe in the future. Very, very disappointing. There's no hiding away from that for the Germans, but it's certainly something they'll come back. And as we see with the PDC tournaments around Europe, a lot of them are based in there, so there's always that sort of fire in the bellies of the Germans to push on next year and in the qualifiers for the Euro events.
No, absolutely.
Dan Simpson is having an absolutely mare with his internet today. It was sure it's not
yeah. Q-School needs to be changed, out of date. We'll come on to that at the end of the roundup, Jack. We've got some thoughts on that. Robert says expecting big things from Nico Kurtz. Yeah, look, Nico, one, he was injured this Q-School, pulled out with a bad back, and his job training, and he's got a very, very good job. So yeah, that was that one. There are rumours that the World Championship. No, Craig, it's going to be Ali Pally for the very, very foreseeable future, mate. So that was that one, and then moving to the UK Q-School, which again never ever disappointed. Your four winners outright were James Wilson, Darren Webster, Ross Montgomery, and Josh Rock, which was absolutely outstanding. Laura is in the chat room. Welcome along. Hope Rob got home okay. Yankee Clipper as well. All good. Jamie is in. But first of all, the four winners, two Stonewarts that had only just lost their cards. Ross Montgomery came from absolutely nowhere, and Josh Rock was talked about a lot. I don't think many people outside of the close circle that were talking about him knew an awful lot about him. But the four on each day were really, really good, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely superb. I've got to be honest, the first 2 days didn't really, whilst James and Darren played really, really well, again, I don't think anyone was left stunned by that. I think there were, guys that people knew had that game, and they really just, between the pair of them, both managed to switch their A game on for the day. Josh Rock, I was really surprised. Again, being completely honest, not somebody I know a great deal about, not somebody I've seen much of, but was just really consistent, like really steady all day, sort of averaged in the 90s every game, just managed to find a level early.
Dan is having an absolute shocker at the moment, but Boise, Jamie Clark, who topped the Order of Merit across the 4 days, was just so consistent. It was unreal.
Yeah, and it's back to the point earlier on about the different ways of winning it. And we'd seen with Super Mario in Europe, who sort of dominated. Jamie Clark didn't dominate as much. However, he was just so consistent, as you'll see there, the amount of leads that he's won. Clear at the top of that, already qualified by the end of day 3. He was sort of cemented his place. Probably one of those then, and it shows how difficult it is to win one on the day. But surprised to very well he performed that he didn't go on and win one of the outright days. And the 4 winners that we did see, I must say I was surprised with the first 2. Even though they'd come straight in at stage 2, they've just fell off the tour. With the performances we've seen recently, more so with Darren Webster, I was very surprised to see him go on and win a day. Probably if he'd have got a card, not as much if he'd have come through picking up 5 or 6 points, but to go on and win a day was very much a surprise on the Webster front, and probably quite similar with Ross Montgomery as well. One player I didn't expect to see on that in a PDC tour card at any time. More his comments and stuff that he's made about the PDC previously. But to see him on there, fair play to him. He's turned up. He's paid his money, and he's run through on day 3. And then Josh Rock was sensational on the final day.
Also, Connor Scott, I know he checks in a lot to the show as well. If you were in tonight, Connor, come and say hello. He was fancied a lot before and finished 3rd on the Order of Merit, Dan, no real surprise that Connor's gone on to get a tour card.
No, and again, like we said a little bit before, just very consistent over that time, and it's no real surprise, but there are some surprise. There are some people that we would have thought would have been in that list that aren't. So whether, as much as you might be talked about and as much as you might be expected to do it, you do still have to show up and win those games. And Connor's managed to do that, and he's managed to do it in real good fashion. He's put more than enough points on the board. He's not scraped through. In the end, he was pretty comfortable there.
Yeah, completely. Ted Everts, the World Youth Champion. Again, a shaky start to Q-School, but the last 2 days produced the goods and looked good. The next 2, 4 and 5, look, it's a blow to the seniors. However, how good to have Richie Burnett back on tour for another 2 years, boys.
I had a feeling that Richie Burnett would be. Yeah, I had a feeling you'd be mentioning Richie Burnett very soon. It is a knock for the seniors, and it will touch upon I know there's a lot of chat in the chat room at the minute about the seniors and how that's the announcements and that. We will touch upon that later on the WDF with the players that fell out of that. Yep. But for Richie Burnett, it's just. And Kevin Burnett, it's just fantastic that they've been able to do it. Richie Burnett back on the tour. Short term, it's not great for us because of the seniors, and we want to see him in a few weeks' time playing against those. But to see him now for the next couple of years on the tour, to see him at the UK Open, all those sort of tournaments we're going to see him in. And trust me, in the next 2 years, and this ain't saying that he won't have it after 2 years, but he'll cause quite a few upsets from what we've seen on the live lead recently with how he's performing. There's going to be so many. Surprises with him. I'm not going to say he's going to go on and win sort of events or major or anything like that. But some of the big boys won't want to draw him in round 1 and round 2 of any events, especially with the action and trying to watch that for a long time.
You pick it right, I think, there, Boise, as well, because realistically, coming in at that stage as a new tour card holder, as soon as he starts hitting seedings, and he's gonna, and when we start to get seeded tournaments, that's exactly what we're gonna see. We're gonna see some very, very interesting early round matches where I think you're gonna get some top players nervously looking at who's gonna have to play him, and that's really fun. If you
think of just looking at the first sort of major one coming up that they're all in is the UK Open. If Richie Burnett made it through to round 3, I can tell you there's some of the top players would rather draw some of the seeds than they would Richie Burnett. Some of the darts he's thrown at the moment, you wouldn't want to be playing him, especially in those shorter format games. So he's going to cause a lot of upsets, but it's great to see him. Obviously, PB, I'm happy for you because I know he's one of your. He's one of those you could watch 24/7, I think.
I tell you what, if the darting gods are up there, can we have Richie in the match play just one more time, please? Just one more time. Richie Burnett at the Winter Gardens. Please, just once more. That's all I'm asking. No, and then Scott Waits, again, a wily old character, maybe a little bit unlucky to lose his card, but dusted himself down and got back. The next 3, we'll do them in order. Nathan Rafferty, been spoken about time and time again. And again, he left it late. But after the heartbreak of why he had to pull out last year, just absolutely made up for the young man that he's going to be on tour, Dan.
Yeah, he's had a really good year this year. A bit of a sort of stabiliser year of things just being... I think kept a bit steady. Obviously, it's got to be difficult, I suppose, when you are talked about that much and people talk about your potential future in the game. When in theory, people talk about his potential to go on and win massive titles. When he isn't holding a tour card, he's not a professional darts player. So you've got it does add a lot of pressure to that. And again, people can talk about you as much as you want, but you've got to turn up and you've got to win the games and you've got to win the legs. And Nathan's managed to do that. And I think there was a lot of people pleased to see it. Barring some of the guys on tour that won't want to face him. I think most of Planet Darts will be pleased with that result. I think, and pleased for him.
Yeah, and then we've spoken about this one so often, and over recent years he's been the architect of his undoing at times as well. But Cameron Menzies almost blew it again. He was sensational on day one, went missing for 2 days, but found it on day 4. And we've spoken about this so often, Boise, that his ceiling is unreal. Look, yes, but there's no B game. And he says it himself. Let's be frank about that. It is all or nothing with Menzies. But when he is on, again, one that the top boys will not want to play.
Yeah, there's players who have just missed out, who have missed out a number of times by just a little bit. And Cameron Menzies is one of those who's sort of, I don't know if it's right to describe him as a nearly die in the sense of, because he has so much ability, but he hasn't really pushed on to the levels that he could have done. It was one of those that at the end of day 3, I'm guessing a lot of people were saying he's butt older then. He's sort of put in that outstanding performance on day 1. He's sort of butt older then. And I think if he wouldn't have got those couple of wins, he would have probably missed out on that difference. So for him to come through that just shows a massive, sort of maturity from Cameron Menzies. There was a lot of talk about him. I know after, I think it was probably day 2, he come out on social media and said a bit about negative sort of press. And I'm not sure if that was solely at him, just generally he was talking about that. But personally, I just think it's great to have him on tour. He's another one, especially when you talked about Pro Tours, talked about early sort of rounds in these events where you've only got a couple of sets or you've got first to 6, first to 10. He's going to be so interesting to watch. He's going to just bring entertainment. And we talked about certain players. And I know we'll move down the list onto someone in a minute. I'm sure you'll talk about Phill, who doesn't sort of bring that entertainment as much as he brings quality. But Cameron Menzies, what he does bring, no one can dispute. What he does bring is entertainment to the sport. And whether it's 110 or 75, you're always entertained by watching that down your TV screen.
Yeah. And speaking of the man himself, we touched on you a minute ago, Connor Scott is in the chat room. Congratulations again, buddy. Hope you are looking forward to playing on tour, mate. Thoroughly deserved, as always, mate. Absolutely superb. And then, number 9, the Joker, John O'Shea, the reigning, defending Windmill World Master. It's been a long time. But we've said it time and time again that you don't win a World Master if you haven't got pedigree. And now he's gone there and done the business and will play on the tour. And again, another man, Dan, that will do damage on the PDC tour.
Yeah, and again, it's the ability that he's got to just hit a level that really, there are not a huge amount of darts players on the planet that can reach the level he is capable of reaching. The challenge for him is going to be finding it on the regular. But you're right. You don't win at all. You don't win a Windmill World Masters if you aren't a very, very, very talented darts player. And I think the biggest challenge I think for the Joker is going to be finding that regular. Finding that on tour in the floor tournaments. That where is sort of his tour cards going to be held, if you like. That's going to be the key for him. But another really exciting prospect, which is one of the things I always quite like after Q-School, is you almost have this sort of like fantasy matchmaking afterwards, don't you? Where you pick different bits and you think, I wonder who they're going to. Well, I can't wait to see this player play so and so and play.
Yeah.
I can't wait for this massive list of people to play Adrian Lewis. It's a really fun time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. And look, I can't wait to see the Joker on tour. And then number 10, George Killington, previous tour card holder, saw him on the Live League. Didn't play particularly well, if I'm being brutally honest. But over the Q-School, Boise, George Killington, one of the most consistent players that we'd seen.
Yeah, one I've not heard a huge amount about. Obviously, seen him on the Live League, but not heard a huge amount about and wasn't playing, fantastic stuff. Wasn't one of the favourites to come through, looking at the names who have missed out. But consistent performer throughout the 4 days. Now got himself a tour card. Then, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can sort of push on and put what we've seen in these 4 days instead of what we've seen in the Live League previously and what has been known previously about George. So it'd be good to see him on there. Like I said, very surprised person, and I'm interested now Dan, I think we should switch this round and move the next person on the list to Phill, Phill to give his opinion on a certain Mr. Mansell. Then he's thought of.
I'm just worried he gets too excited and falls off his chair.
To be fair, there's a great question in the chat room. Phill, which one? Move in with James Wade for the weekend or watch every Mickey Mansell game all year? Move in with James Wade because James is actually a really, really top guy. Away from darts, you can have a good chat with him, and his band is actually really, really good. So that's an easy one.
He's got that cinema room as well, hasn't he, Phill? You and James could watch Mickey Mansell games all weekend, couldn't you, in his cinema room?
I'm not going to lie, I would rather stick pins in my eyes. We'll come on to that in a second. But as we are talking about Q-School and the like, absolutely delighted to be joined by Chris Murphy. Murph, good evening, buddy.
Evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well, mate. Very well.
Evening,
how's things? Recovered
Evening,
from Q-School?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I wasn't doing anything there, so just watching you guys on the stream and the results on Dart Connect. But yeah, really decent array of players really getting through. So I think it's really interesting.
I was going to say, what's your initial take on the who won cards and who missed out? Anyone glaringly obvious that you thought would get one that didn't, and any surprises that you thought, where did he come from?
Yeah, having worked on the Live League last year, I just caught the end of what you were talking about with George Killington, and his performance has surprised me a little bit. Although we have seen him do that in the past, but not as consistently as he did at Q-School. I think all of us that have watched or worked on the Live League were very, very surprised to see Chaz Barstow not do well. I think that was a big, big shock for me, particularly how well he played against Michael Van Gerwen at the World Championship. So yeah, it was strange not to see him get anywhere near qualifying, to be honest. But on the other side, great to see the likes of Richie Burnett, Kevin Vaness, who obviously we're both going to be in the World Seniors, and I think they really opened up the field because I think they were amongst the favourites for that event. So really good to see Richie in particular back on tour. I look forward to seeing him back on the Pro Tour.
Yeah, just a couple in the chat room before I say, I'm not being disrespectful to Mickey, everyone, because if you listen, I always say Mickey is a great player, just not exciting to watch. That's my point. Not that he's not a good player, because he is, and I've always say that, but I don't enjoy watching Mickey Mansell play, and they're pretty sure there's a high population would agree with me on that good player, but doesn't tick the exciting boxes. But looking at it as well, the drama in Niedenhausen, Roby John clinging on for dear life, and were you surprised that he was in that position, Murph?
Yeah, I thought he was a certainty to be right at the top end, if not win his tour card outright on one of the days. Again, I don't know if there's a little bit of hangover from the previous year. Q-School comes around very, very quickly for players that have been playing a lot of darts the previous year, particularly ones like Roby John that have been involved in the World Championship. So I don't know what the preparation's like in comparison to someone who is playing kind of the whole year to go to Q-School and try and get that tour card. And maybe there's a bit of that in there. But yeah, I was really surprised with some of the names that were up at the top. That surprise that I'll admit that some of them I hadn't even heard of. So it was interesting, the European one.
Yeah, I did an interview yesterday with the guys over at the CDC, which is coming out in the next couple of days. But we've seen Jeff Smith making a huge impact, Matt Campbell now on tour, Danny Baggish, and the fact that Lauby, Leonard Gates went so close, Jules Van Dongen was sensational over in the EU. The CDC is now starting to make a real splash, Murph, and we're seeing that in the level of performances as well from these guys.
Yeah, and I think we've always had one or two good players who can challenge the top professionals on their day. Obviously, John Part would be an outlier to that from North America, a three-time world champion. Obviously, one of the best players that we've ever had around. But you see the likes of Darren Young in years gone by. They could come and do a job and beat a top player, but then plummet in the next round. I think you're starting to get a crop now of really serious contenders to go deep on Pro Tour events to challenge the big boys in major events. And yeah, I think it is really a thriving scene at the moment. Maybe to rival the DPA.
A quick turnaround for the disappointment of Q-School for some players. The fact that we've got a challenge tour just this very weekend, for some of them, that could be a tough one because all the expectations at Q-School, they were going there to get their card, the disappointment of not doing it, and they have to bounce back immediately because we've seen in previous years the person or persons that do well in that first challenge tour, the world's their oyster because they're always going to get an opportunity on the Pro Tour at some point if you do well.
Yeah, of course. And Chaz Barstow, again, a player which I know was a little bit different last year with the Q-School rankings, but he went on to make a couple of quarterfinals on the Pro Tour and then made it to the World Championship. So I think, people are going to have to pick themselves up. It's really bittersweet, probably, to be going to the Challenge Tour because they're not playing on the Pro Tour, but they have got that opportunity to put themselves in there. We've seen seasons where somebody's done that. I think Scott Mitchell, maybe a couple of years ago,
correct.
won one
Scott
of the first
Mitchell
Challenge Tour events and ended up playing on everything for the rest of the season without a tour card. So, there's still opportunities, back doors and ways in, and people that were close or even not close, just had a bad week. They've still got chances, so they shouldn't beat themselves up too much.
You follow darts the same as we do, Murph, pretty much 24/7, and we were floating this idea around. I don't know if you heard us talking about it, but maybe changing the dynamics of Q-School and having more of a promotion and relegation between the two tours to make them kind of relevant. And Q-School is your way on to the Challenge Tour. What do you think about that? So not winning a card then isn't based on just your performances over a week or 4 days, however many it is. It's done on the season. Yeah,
I've kind of long been an advocate of that, actually. I believe that is the most likely way that you're going to get the best 128 tour card holders every year if you're bringing them through the position on the Challenge Tour and Development Tour rather than so many from Q-School. In simple terms, that seems to me to be the best way. However, just you don't want to lose that golden ticket element. So I think there may be a way to kind of merge those two elements where you still have Q-School and the outright winners, or maybe the top 4 or 8 or whatever it might be, get Pro Tour cards, and the next amount going to the Challenge Tour. And then I think it enables you to then put a cap on Challenge Tour entries as well, because that has been a problem in some years where there's almost too many players playing on the Challenge Tour. And the players that really aren't up to it, unfortunately, they don't then go and play on the Challenge Tour.
Yeah, no, completely agree. We're going to touch on it in a bit, but we're going to ask you had time to digest the new Premier League taken, and what was your initial reaction, and has it changed having time to think about it?
Yeah, my initial reaction was that it needed something to freshen it up, and I think it's a very good format in terms of the crowd that are there in the venue. So for the fans that have bought tickets, they're going to see their own mini tournament every night. And I think that really works for them. I don't know yet how well it will work for the viewer at home, watching on TV every week. I'd like to think it'll work in the same way, and certainly it'll have my interest. But I'm not quite sure how it will. I think it's worth a try. I think it's worth a try, something new. The only thing I would say is that one of the criticisms of the Premier League has been seeing the same players week in, week out. With this format, and I'm not 100% sure exactly how they're going to fit the draw bracket every week. With this format, you could be in danger of seeing the same matches week in, week out. So, positives and negatives, but I think overall it's worth giving a try and see how it pans out.
Yeah, correct. We were saying the same, that for the fan in the venue, it's brilliant. But if you're at home, if you're 5 weeks in, and you've seen Michael Van Gerwen and Gerwen Price, or Gerwen Price against Peter Wright or Johnny Clayton in the final 4 or 5 weeks in a row, you could be like, I'm going to turn off now because I've seen this over and over again. And the other point to this is, we touched on it as well, it'd be interesting to see your take on this, is if you're seeing those huge matchups every week, when they meet in a match play semi-final or a match play final, does it then take something away from it because you've seen it 15 times already this year?
I'm not sure about. I think it kind of, the 2 points are linked. So the first thing I would say about the previous point is that maybe this is the best time ever to do it, because it's the first time really in years that we've not had one dominant player or maybe two dominant players. The titles have been shared about. So maybe it is the least likely time that we're going to see that repeat final week in, week out. So that might not happen. That might not be a problem. But if it does, I don't know, really. I think that maybe in the Premier League itself, it may get a little tedious. But I just think in the other events, it's something completely different. And I can't really see how meeting a lot in the Premier League takes away from playing, for example, in the final of the World Matchplay. I think that it's a standalone event, and you want to see the best players playing each other in that, regardless of how many times you see them play that year.
I know that you must have squiggled them down at some point. Who would your 8 be?
Well, yeah, I'm assuming that the criteria is going to stay the same, that the top 4 go in. So that would be Wright, Van Gerwen, Price and Wade. And then for me, Michael Smith should be in because of the World Championship run. Obviously, Johnny Clayton's going to be in there as well. I don't think in the last 12 months that De Sousa has done enough to get in, personally.
I agree.
I think he may have been in with 10. I probably wouldn't put him in 8. Gary Anderson probably will be in if he wants to be in. So you're looking for that final space. I would probably just go for Rob Cross for that last space. I think he's probably done the most of the remaining players to deserve to be in.
No, I think that's
Did
kind
I give
of
you
most people. I think that's the kind of general consensus online that they think the 8 will be. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if there's a twist coming somewhere. I think
I would quite like it if they didn't reveal them until they were on the stage on that first night, because it's getting closer and closer to that. I completely agree. I'm not sure if there's going to be a twist, but we'll wait and see. But for yourself, 2022, busy as always, live league, Pro Tour stuff. Looking forward to the action starting again very, very soon for yourself. And have you got anything in particular you're looking forward to this year, Murph? Yeah, a lot of things, kind of the things that I enjoy most, they can kind of appear out of nowhere. So like last year, I ended up doing quite a lot of work for TalkSport at the World Championship. And you saw where that commentary box was positioned. It was a thrill to be sat there right at the side of the stage, exactly in line with the player throwing. So that was fantastic. So I'd love to do some more of that in 2022. But yeah, just really into the Euro Tour and back on a few Euro Tours this year. So not done really anything in front of a crowd for until the World Championship for a long time. So yeah, looking forward to getting out and getting abroad and doing a couple of Euro Tours. But just really interested in seeing how certain players play, certain players adapt to their kind of new roles. Michael Van Gerwen is kind of in a new role again this year, coming back, but he's certainly the hunter rather than the hunted. Gerwin Price, world number 1, but not world champion. And Johnny Clayton has been a dominant force and now believes that he's one of the best players in the world. I actually think, going back to the talk on Q-School, the intake of players this year, you've probably got at least 8, 9, maybe 10 players that will settle into the tour straight away and be very dangerous draws. So we could see some interesting results of those first Pro Tours as well. Yeah, so just the whole thing, looking forward to being busy and hope. Last year, at the back of last year, I got a flurry of 9 darters as well. That's always nice. And I have to say it, Phill, one of them was from Mickey Mansell.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was. As I said, no, I've never argued he's a good player. But however, if it was Mickey Mansell against Justin Pipe in the World Championships, I would not want to be calling that one. I'd leave that one to someone else. But an interesting social media post, which I'm going to ask you on, Murph, because you and I both know Michael fairly well. You probably better than me. It's the first time I've ever seen him take a pop-up travel board to an exotic holiday location and practice whilst he's on holiday. That's an interesting statement.
Yeah, and I saw that, and I think it's a case of someone learning from the mistakes. I think Michael Van Gerwen has admitted that he didn't really do anything in terms of practice when the first wave of the pandemic came and lockdown and all that. And it's not really recovered fully from that yet. Obviously, who knows what would have happened at the World Championship? You know, that's just one of those things. We don't know if he'd have gone on and won it. We don't know if he'd have gone and got beaten in the next round. But the signs were there. So I think it's important that he keeps this progression going, because if he does, he'll start winning tournaments and big tournaments very, very quickly. But if he takes his foot off the gas again and didn't do something like practice while he's on holiday, then he might be a couple of months further down the line again. So he's just got to keep this upward curve going. And I think he's learned from his mistake and showed some maturity in doing that. Even though he will probably absolutely hate every minute of it, it'll benefit him in the long run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Murph, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the live lounge for the first time, mate, and massively appreciate you taking time out to join us and come and talk to us.
Pleasure's all mine, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show.
No worries. Cheers, Murph. Thank you very much. Chris Murphy joining us there, experienced broadcaster. Great to have his insight, boys, into what's been going on, which was great. So back to the end of Q-School before we move on. Touched on that. Let's go straight into it. Mickey Mansell, an experienced pro. Like I've said, never going to say he's not a good player, because he's a fabulous player. And the fact he only had a hand operation a short while ago, missed out on the world qualifiers and everything like that. Big statement from Mansell, boys.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, just to be clear, when we are talking about him in regards to his speed of play, it's no disrespect to Mickey as a person or as a dart player. It's just the entertainment factor of the sport. But full credit to Mickey Mansell for getting that. We'd heard a lot about the struggles that he'd had in 2021. You touched on there in regards to the operation. So for him to come through that and to come through it, building up the points and netting to six, full credit must go to Mickey Mansell. And he's another one who's, because of now what we've seen and how he's performed over those 4 days, he's another one who early on could cause a couple of upsets in those early rounds at the Pro Tours.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Nick Fulwell, again, it's a bit of a surprise one for me, this one, Dan, that we've seen Nick in the past do some great stuff on the Pro Tour beforehand, qualify for the WDF Worlds, but we saw him on the live league and he was very, very patchy. And I was like, I'm not sure. And I think looking at the points are very good, but only a +6 leg difference tells you when he was good, he was very good. But when he was awful, he was also getting battered as well.
Yeah, and I think that is, I think whilst, he hasn't, he's a clear point ahead of where the cut-off line, he is there on, he's got the same amount of points as Nathan Rafferty and Cameron Menzies. That's how his Q-School has gone. And we talked about their results very differently, but you're dead right with that leg difference in that, his ground game's out and just got over the line, or he's up and down his play. That's exactly what that leg difference is going to tell you. Now, whether that is going to be or whether that is going to keep a tour card as well as win one, I think we've seen a lot of people win tour cards and then really struggle. And I think that Nick, unfortunately, might be one of those that struggles to maintain the level required on as regular as he will need to.
Yeah, completely. Evening, Henry. Hope you are good, mate. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Henry's coming around mine for a bit of a lesson on how to use all the software, because you will be seeing Henry in our Pro Tour coverage. That first weekend in February is carnage. We've got the whole team on standby to be doing something that weekend, whether it's Premier League, Pro Tours or World Seniors. All hands on deck. But the last one, I'm going to show you a picture. There's a couple of pictures we're going to show you. But Sean Wilkinson was on 5 points. He was left stranded. And this is a fabulous picture from the PDC. This is Sean Wilkinson not being able to watch the action as he is stranded on 5 points, boys. And what an image that is.
I suppose, where it gets exciting, isn't it? That is unfortunately, what we didn't have from either Q-School this year is we didn't have anybody sort of do a baggish and get over the line at the very end and just secure. And, you know, nobody needed that win at the end in order to secure their tour card. But where we did have was both in the UK and in Europe was people sat just looking at the very end. We had the same from Rodriguez, you know, just clinging on to that final spot as the day went on. And that was where all the excitement really lay on that last day, wasn't it?
Yeah, another great picture as well was from the final, what it meant. Rafferty, they both already had cards, and I think that's what that embrace meant to the pair of them, Boise, that they were already both there, but the excitement, the ecstasy, everything that goes with it, and you can see that in that one picture.
Yeah, 100%. We've touched on both players there already who have gone through different sort of experiences for both. Obviously, Josh Rock coming through and winning the last day, already through though at that point. And then Nathan Rafferty, we've heard the side of the story that you talked about on the stream. I think it was on day 2 for Rafferty with Andy Hamilton.
Yeah.
And for such a young lad to sort of have that experience within a tournament and then come back for the next 2 days and still secure his spot, fair play to Rafferty. Not only that, the way that Rafferty sort of had that card with the Willie Ball until the Willie Ball and 9, there's all them sort of stories behind it. So it just shows what it means. We do talk about the opportunities, and Dan hit the nail on the head perfectly with the people who have missed out have got probably more opportunities this year than we've seen any other year with Lively, WDF, all those sort of tournaments that we've got. However, the golden ticket, as Murph touched upon, is being on that tour, and it means so much more to make that step up. So fair play to the young lads there, and it just shows how much that this sport and how much it means to those people.
Absolutely. So that was 2020 Q-School in a nutshell. It was an emotional 7 days for everyone involved, whether you were working at the arena, whether you were playing it, whether you were people like us gripped on everything. Before we move on, a couple of people said thoughts on Matthew Edgar missing out. Look, as we said, not just Edgar, there's a lot of them, but as Dan and Boise have said to, that if you were ever going to not have a tour card, now is the best place to do it, because just factually, and this is facts, that I think it was from 75 to 128, if you played regularly in the Live League and had good runs in the WDF stuff as well, you made more money. That's fact. That players outside the 128 were making more money than the lower end of the 128. Yeah. So it is not the end of the world. It's not the end of a career by not having a tour card, boys.
No, it's not.
And it is just...
Go on, Dan.
Go on, boys. Well, it is just for some of these guys who are just getting their cards, and then they're going to try and fight to keep hold of them. It doesn't take a genius to work out. They are far more likely to go deeper in some of the tournaments outside of the PDC. So when they play an event not inside the PDC, they are far, far more likely to go 1, 2, 3 games into a tournament than they are to consistently go out in round 1 on the Pro Tour. And over the course of 12 months, like you say, Phill, the maths doesn't lie. It is not easy to maintain, a sort of a profitable career with a PDC tour card. It's really, really difficult. And some of these guys are going to find that out.
Yeah, just touching on it there. There's someone says, what's the prize money for the Live League? So the players get an appearance fee to play every day. That's down to what that is, but they get an appearance fee. And then on a cycle, so it's done on a 5-week cycle, where if you have the perfect 5 weeks where you qualify for Champions Week and all that, you can walk away with over 10 grand on a 5-week cycle. Don't get me wrong, you still have to have the perfect one, but even if you don't, there is still fabulous prize money on offer. So that's that one. Mace makes a great point, as always. Great to have you in the chat room, Mace. He said so many players made a good start. Is it expecting too much of the players in terms of a grueling format? Effectively, yeah, some of them played 7 Pro Tours in a row, effectively.
Yeah, but on that one thing I was looking at that did very much surprise me. It did have an impact on it, but I'd seen in the UK, I think 58% of the tour card holders at the end of Q-School had come through stage 1, and in Europe that was 60%. So it was higher than what I thought, because the names sort of you expect to get those tour cards are in stage 2, because of the ones who've either come off the tour, had good years last year on challenge or development tours. But it does have an impact on some players. You can look at that, just the list of players who are on 5 and 4 points to miss out, and some of those had those 7 days. So it is one that still, for me, it's improved the past couple of years, Q-School, with the stages coming in. So you know that obviously stage 1 and stage 2, that was a step in the right direction. I'm totally with you, and I can see Murph's point as well in regards to that there needs to be some sort of change, that there's more benefits of doing well across a year than there is across those 4 days or 7 days.
Yeah, completely. So that was that one. I know Murph spoke about it, boys. Same for you. There it was. The new format, every match means something, is the way it was billed and dubbed. Again, same question to you boys that we asked Murph. Your first thoughts. I know, Boise, we did the live stream with Tiz about it. Same for you, Dan. First thoughts, and has your opinion now changed now you've had time to settle and think about the new format?
I don't think. I think I was sort of fairly clear in. I don't dislike the format at all. I like the format. As someone who's got quite a lot of tickets for the Premier League events this year, I'm really looking forward to it, because I think the point there, it's incredibly good for the people in the stadium watching their own tournament, especially just for them, is brilliant. And I really like the format. I just don't think it's the Premier League. It just seems like they've invented this really good tournament, this really good event, and because they weren't sure what to do with the Premier League, they've said, "Oh, well, we'll do this as the Premier. This can be the Premier League now." And that's sort of how I feel on it. In that, I think the format's brilliant, and I'm really excited by it, and I can't wait to watch it in the arena. I agree. I don't think it's exciting, or it might not be as exciting for the television viewer, depending on what they do with the lineup and how that works and who plays in it each week. But I just don't think it is the Premier League. I would have gone and retitled it as something different.
Boise, for you, have you changed your opinion from?
I was changing my opinion during the stream when I was talking to you and Tiz. One thing I will say is what the PDC did was make an announcement that made Phill bars quiet for an hour. The amount you spoke to during that hour was a very surprise, because I think it was a lot of information taken in, and I think it did to a lot of people. Obviously, it's different reacting to it live on a stream than it is, and we saw social media have different views. We run a poll that sort of was totally against it, but by the end of the show was a bit 50-50. For me personally, I get Dan's point. I'm going as a fan, and that sort of one night I really can't wait for. The rest of it and watching it on TV, then I just see how it unfolds, because I think the problem of that is I expected them to increase numbers, not decrease numbers. So they've now made the decision probably more difficult in regards to who they pick. The other part of it, it's hard for them to see. There's probably the 4 players on the screen now in Wright, Clayton and MVG Price. If you add more players, you probably can't have them all playing on the same night. But people who have paid tickets, I know you don't know the lineup, but are expecting to see those when you go to a Premier League night. So if you paid for a Premier League ticket and didn't see Price and MVG because it wasn't their turn, it's sort of a different feel. I'm still undecided, and I think it depends then on who the 8 are named. And for me, the 8 who are named have to now be named on an entertainment value, more on what's happened in the past 12 months for some of those. And so if there's some players in there who don't have that entertainment factor, like one name before we go into the 8, I would say for me an entertaining factor doesn't come James Wade. I know for you, Phill, it'd be someone like Jose. I know he wasn't in your 10, so he's not going to be in your 8. There's players there who that drop into that. Who when they drop into that, it's all about who them 8 are. And my biggest worry about it all is the fact that we can potentially see, and I've seen it on social media, people doing different sort of formulas of how many times people can play. And I think the most that we're looking at is you could see games being played 6 or 7 times in this Premier League. So you could have a Price MVG 7 times. And to the question that you asked, Merv, it does lose it a little bit. I'm not sure if it loses it in the match play or World Championship, but it loses that feel for it, considering we see these games in World Series events, you know, however many World Series events we've got, these tend to be the quarterfinals and semi-finals anyway. So for me, they've got to look at that tournament with the same players.
I probably am less in the know, like less likely to hear a rumor than anybody else on the team. So it's very much just my guess is that as soon as I saw it was an 8-person format, ran over 16 weeks, I immediately thought, well, there'll be 16 players. And what you'll get, my guess completely, is you'll get 2 groups of 8, and one will play one week, one will play the next week. And I think there'll be some angry people, like Boise says there, like if I've got a ticket to go to Leeds and I don't see MVG, but the people in Manchester see him the week after, like I might be knocked off at that. But my guess, as soon as I saw there was eight slots, I thought, well, 8 slots, 16 weeks, you'll get 16 people who will each play 8 times. That was my guess. Now, I don't know whether anyone thinks the same as me. They're probably worried if other people did, but you know that's my assumption anyway.
Right, you boys have got a couple of seconds. You know what I'm going to ask you in a minute. I'm going to address the chat room, and then I want some names. The Joker is in the chat room. John O'Shea, hope you got home safe and well, buddy. Pleasure as always to have you involved. Rose says, I feel bad for Jose, runner-up last year, now being written off from the sport. Not written off from the sport, but maybe from this Premier League, Rose. I agree. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, everyone. I'm trying to Phill to give these boys a few more seconds. If you haven't yet, we're getting close to that 20k mark. So please subscribe and make sure you drop us a like as well. Only 76 likes. You guys can do miles better than that. Right, boys. And especially for you, Boise, has your 8 changed from what it was the other day?
I can't remember what I said the other day, but I don't think it has. The 6. So I remember I had 6 guarantees, and my 6 guarantees were Price, Wright, MVG, current top 3. Johnny Clayton, obviously, he's on the picture as well, so they're not going to not put him in there. Michael Smith, world finalist, and Rob Frost, European champion. Those 6 for me were guarantees, and I don't think my 2 have changed. So my other 2 are Gary Anderson and Fallon Sherrock. I think, especially with this 8, the formatting, I think it suits more Fallon coming into this than it does a Premier League normal season. I think someone could have sort of a bad few weeks, that not take the quarterfinals, but still then build it up. So I think there's a twist in the tail, and it's no longer the top 4 are guaranteed a spot in the Premier League. I think James Wade, Premier League winner and UK Open winner, just touch upon coming into the past 12 months. I think Wade misses out. I think I'm also, was it Rose, did you say, who said about Jose? For me, if there was 10, Jose should be in, because I do think that Premier League runner-up would normally fit into that, and I think there should be. However, now that format's changed, we've had to knock another 2 off. Jose was probably one of the players who was sitting in that 10th, 11th spot for the Premier League if we had 10. Now we've got 8. I just can't see Jose being in there, which is a real shame for me because I'm a fan of Jose and I wanted to see him in there. But I do think Fallon makes it.
For you, Dan?
Who I think they'll pick, or I want?
Both.
I think the guarantees: Price, Wright, MVG, Clayton, Smith, Gando. I think those 6 are pretty much nailed on. As long as Gary wants to play, then those 6 I think are
Danny just wants to play darts. That's all Gary Anderson wants
to do is play darts. Nothing else. Yeah, just only wants to play darts. No, but I think those 6. I think there's absolutely no there's no shock, I think, in those 6. I personally wouldn't pick Fallon if it was my choice. Just for reasons other than I just think there's better matches to watch. Regardless of whether people tune in, I just think there's better matches to be made in that tournament. What I think is, if you see Fallon, and if Fallon goes in, then I think you'll probably find another curveball as that other, as number 7, if you like. You've got to classify Fallon as number 8. But I think if you see Fallon at number 8, you might get somebody like a Joe Cullen. I don't think you'll see Dimmy this year, and I think that Cullen is quite a nice, in terms of what he offers in terms of his game, and also what he offers commercially to Sky and everybody else that's got an interest in it. Then I think Cullen is a happy switch for Dimmy. Young, relatively good-looking lad, comes onto a good entrance song. I think he can shift some darts. I think he's got some good backing, some sponsors. I think that you could even see Searle and Fallon, because I think if they put Fallon in, they're going to have to show and demonstrate that they're doing something interesting with who their picks are. You can't have 7. You can't have the top 7 and Fallon, because then it starts to look a bit ridiculous. You need somebody else from outside that real top bracket. And someone like a Cullen or a Searle, I think, ticks that box for me.
No Rob Prost, Dan? Not even in the talk? No Rob Prost, European champion?
He wouldn't make it for me. If we went to 16, he'd make it. He might make it if we were at 12. I don't think he'd make 10 for me, mate. I don't think. He's a bit southern. I like the north-south divide,
I've had some time to think and digest, and look, there's a very obvious 8 that everyone are picking. That in terms of just darts, it's hard to argue not to pick that 8. Yeah. But I think if they were going to pick that 8, why didn't they just announce it with the format change? I kind of agree. I think there may be a twist coming in the picks, and I kind of agree that if you do one rogue pick, it looks very sus. So I think there may be 2. I'm completely with you, Dan. I think if they're going to do it, there may be 2 rogue ones. Fallon,
I just think they have a set of what they're looking for from like when you do just put it up and you say, right, it's we're looking at commercially exciting. This is we're producing a fan friendly TV show for people to tune in and watch. Then there are things that they are looking for players to bring to the table. And then I think what you've got to do is look back at previous years' lineups and say, well, why did that person get a pick? It's not just because they won a tournament. There's a reason that they wanted them on the television. And then what are we then missing without that person, and who fills those shoes? And I think you can sort of figure out. It becomes a shorter and shorter list as you go on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out with this radical change, because the PDC haven't said, it's still the top 4 are guaranteed picks. So we don't know if that rule is now gone with these changes. I have a funny feeling that we may see Rids and Humphreys.
I wouldn't dislike that at all.
As the 2 rogue picks, shall we say? Rogue, probably not the right word, but after the World Championships they had, maybe it's Rids and Humphreys that get the 2.
Can you imagine a Callan Ridge finals night in Newcastle?
It'd be all right, wouldn't it?
I've got a feeling you've already started imagining it, Dan, to be honest, mate.
Very much so, mate.
Yeah.
I guess, look, Phil, the only thing I don't see them having, I'm with you. I'm not sure road's the right way, but 2 sort of outsider picks who don't fit in the top 10, if or not in the top 10. If they do have 2 of those, with all the talk, with all the sort of social media content, with all the sort of interviews that we've seen on TV around the Premier League, I just don't see if they do go down the route of 2, I don't see them going down the route of 2 and Fallon not being one of them. I think she will then fit into that. If she does,
I don't know this, but Fallon's manager, in my opinion, is, and Mansell back me up in the chat room on this one. Fallon's manager, for me, is up there with the very best in the business at managing dart players. He'll have seen all the reaction on social media around Fallon, and maybe, just maybe, he'll go no. That if she is offered it, he'll say no, because not that she can't compete, but the abuse that she's got just from Q-School has been out of order.
Yeah,
and he may just put his foot down and save her from an emotional battering more than anything. I don't know that, but I just know that he's up there with the very, very best. And if offered, he might say to her, look.
Yeah, it's a shame that that's happening. It shouldn't be happening in this sport or in life at all around the abuse that she's getting. And to be clear, if someone is picked to play in the Premier League, it's a decision that's been made by PDC and the broadcasters around who is in that Premier League. So for anyone who's in there, doesn't deserve the knots. But with those sort of outsider picks, the one I don't expect, and I know Dan mentioned him there, if they are going to pick these for sort of entertaining, upcoming, Joe Cullen fits that bill like Nathan Aspinall has, I don't see Ryan Searle fitting that bill just yet. I think he's probably a year or two away from to sort of having that sort of support, the massive venues that you have to go into. I don't see him fitting into that 8. I didn't have him fitting into the 10. He's one I wouldn't put in that. But for someone like Joe Cullen, I think it's a great shout to be in the mix if he's not in. And he's in the mix every year, it seems, because he's just on the cusp of the top 10.
Menzies said, Phill, laugh out loud, you don't turn down the Premier League. Come on. I know for a fact that when Fallon beat Ted and Mensa in the Premier League, Sky wanted to give her their wildcard pick there and then, again. And Fallon's manager said no then. Going back 2 years. So that's why I say it wouldn't be on the rounds. And Jake says she hasn't got any abuse. Believe me, mate, she has. I've got lucky enough that I know Fallon really, really well. And I've got access to her Twitter account because she's just not very good on Twitter and obviously has sponsorship commitments to do. I've seen firsthand some of the abuse that she gets in her DMs and stuff like that because I've got access to it. So,
yeah, but
100%.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Phill. Obviously, you have that access that even publicly you can see a lot of the fake accounts that have been set up on Twitter and other social accounts where there is those. It's a public knot. It's not right. She's someone who's going out there to earn a living. Rightly or wrongly should have been in this competition is the debate to have, but it's not the debate around, you know, the abuse she gets and that. Because he's totally wrong, and it's not just her. There's other players who have publicly admitted the sort of that. It isn't right at all. They are just people trying to earn a living. As probably back to Phill. Back to that picture you shown at Q-School, how much it means for people to earn a living from this sport and how much it means that it's their job. And it's the same for every single player. There's no difference whether you're current world number 1 in Gerwen Price or you've just done a Tard and Nathan Rafferty. They're all there to earn a living, and that's what they're all doing. So they shouldn't be getting that on any platform at all or in person.
Weekly Darts Caster in says, evening, gents. Evening. I'm guessing it's Lau. Hope you are good. Mate says, is that an exclusive? No, because Sky will never admit it, but Boise will let you know because he's been in the press room for the first time for the last year. We get to hear lots of bits and bobs, don't we, Boise, of everyday conversations between media, broadcasters and everything like that.
Yeah, it's a completely different insight. It's an insight we're both privileged to have had. And you do hear these conversations. not as a public message or not as a statement or anything like that. You see the conversations that happen that we are privy to, that that are great for us to have those. So it's not a statement as such from them, but it's one we do here. And I was with you on quarterfinals Premier League, and I think that sort of quarterfinals World Championship, and that sort of is the time when the Premier League comes to life.
And a couple of times you looked at me and was like, "Is this normal?" It's like, yeah. Is the thing? Yeah, we are lucky. It wasn't a decline. Sky wanted to give her a wild card, and it was just like, she's not ready. Yeah, and I think she's a better player now than what she was when she beat Ted and Mensa as well.
I think the other thing as well, the other point there, and the point, I mean, it's frustrating that we have these conversations about, like, just, the abuse that people get for not winning a match or not. It's completely ridiculous. But the Premier League, as we've seen in some years, Dozer from last year, Rob Cross the year before, the Premier League is not an easy place to be if you are not winning or being competitive in games, because it can be so relentless, and it can happen. You can go week after week after week, and you're on the telly, and there's loads of viewers, and you're probably getting the highest levels of sort of social media coverage outside of the World Championships, where people are talking about it, and if you go on a run of 3, 4, 5 weeks and your form slips and you're getting hammered on, and now that it's not an easy place to be. And I think that's why it is a format, and it is a tournament that lends itself to established top level players. Yes, they're the box office players, and yes, they're the ones we all like to go and see, but they're also players that are sort of comfortable at their own ability. They're used to dealing with the arena crowds, and their game is as such that they might have peaks and troughs, but you expect them to come back and find a level where you worry that there's potential where the Premier League could have and may have caused long-term damage to some players, and that's not what you want to see for somebody as early in their career as Fallon.
Yeah, no, 100%. But it's going to be it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Well, Phill, just one point on there. Dan raised, and I've not really thought about it until Dan sort of mentioned it. He spoke about Dozer and Cross there having sort of disappointing years in the Premier League, and they then fall away after week 9. What we're now going to see is if someone's in that sort of form, that disappointment sort of now extends to the full 16 weeks, because that player, yes, it might help that you're not going to constantly see yourself bottom of the league, and you've not got something to play for each week, because you've got that 10 grand each night. But if someone's not in that form this year, or we see someone dropped considerably, that 16 weeks could be we've seen the Premier League damage some players' careers in the future. It could go a lot further now because of the 16 weeks continuous, and it's potentially something to consider in the future, that maybe you have a promotion, relegation. How it would work with the league table, I'm not sure. But you have some sort of 2 players drop out after week 8 and another 2 players come in. Maybe, I don't know, looking at it in the future, but it could be
for me,
difficult to move someone not in form.
It just, for me, Boise, that just highlights again, when we talk, and that's what I was, the Premier League can be a dark place if you're not winning matches and you're getting hammered every single week. And the fact that there is 16 weeks there where potentially you're going to put somebody on to take a whipping like that, that's one of the other reasons why I just don't think we're going to get 8 players that play 16 times. I just don't think that's what we're going to see. And that's just one of the many reasons.
That's what's currently on their statement, though, Dan. The 8 players will be announced in due course, or however it's worded, but it does state on there that it will be 8 players on their statement. Whether that changes, because it changed about 10 minutes after it went live, it does state at the bottom that it is 8 players on I think it will be out this year. I think it's something they'll look at in future years, that they might have to do some sort of mid-season relegation promotion. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it to start, though. It's how I feel after week 5, week 6, when we've seen potentially the same sort of games, is where the question marks will come for me.
Also, news released today from the PDC, the match play tickets go on sale, which is absolutely immense. The best tournament on the calendar. Blackpool is already on the horizon, boys.
I can't wait.
Phill, the one I saw on our website looked very similar to that, but all them sponsors at the bottom, it did have Pot World in the corner. Pot World Blackpool was just on the right. I don't know if that was a different one that you edited, mate, but I was in a different one. Only 5 months away. One counting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and a tournament that last year, I think there was a couple of days where it was restrictions, but it was a fantastic event that Peter Wright was just sensational in, and for us as a team, it's going to be good because it was one where Daniel was down for a couple of nights. Obviously, Jar was down with us. I was there, you was there, Phill. I'm sure a couple of the other team will be down, but it's just the best tournament for me, like venue-wise, positioning the wheat as a whole. It's just one that I'm very much looking forward to. And by Dan's celebration dance, when you uploaded the picture, I've got a feeling Dan's feeling the same.
I can't wait, mate. It's you know what it is like. So for those of like for people who do what I do for a living, that week in the year is quite special. Like it's quite spectacular. We look forward to that week in the year. Then also it's like, so my wife's family are on a sort of 45 minutes from there. So I get like, I mix it all up. I got a night out with my brother-in-law there. We had a night out with you guys. I'm bringing my lads. So it's Billy's first ever trip to the darts this year. He's going to do an afternoon session at the Matchplay. So it's his first ever trip into the darts. He's coming. So we'll be in Blackpool for a few days this year, and I cannot wait.
It was also Dan, our first online darts challenge of me and you on the dartboard, so we'll have to step that up as well for July.
I tell you what we need to do, boss. We need to find a better darts venue, because we managed to find a venue that had no hockey, 2 darts, and no light. It was an absolute shambles, wasn't it? And a table under the board that we had to. It was the worst darts setup of any pub ever. But we managed to make the most of it, didn't we?
Only in Blackpool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we move on, a couple of quick ones in the chat room. The live league returns on the 1st of February. Everyone, Jim says, another question is, Matthew, had you finished? No, absolutely not. The avenues for people that don't have a tour card now are better than they've ever been. So
he's playing the Challenge Tour this weekend, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going to the Challenge Tour this weekend. You've got the live league. You've got the new amateur darts circuit. You've got WDF events as well. So, look, if anything, if you're not going to break that upper echelons of the PDC, it's arguably the best ever time not to have a tour card. That there's that one. Marcus says, do you think darts will ever outgrow Blackpool? Darts has already outgrown Blackpool. However, you can't move the match play. Let's be fair. You could sell the match because the capacity at Blackpool isn't that big in terms of the venues that we see everywhere else, but it's just that magical thing about the Winter Gardens that you can't move it.
Yeah, that's the part of that. The part of that the people need to be aware of as well. You could sell it 2-3 times over, especially the Saturday sessions. One thing you always need to look at is the earlier rounds, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night sort of things. They don't always get massive sales, so it's all right moving it to a massive venue, but when you've got a week-long tournament, you can then have venues. You can have venues where it's a bit dead in the crowd. I think we've seen that at the Grand Prix in Leicester a couple of nights there. We could have that as well if you move this, and you've got to make sure you're moving to a city where you've got a big darts following. I know most cities in the UK have, but Blackpool should never be moved.
No. completely. Also, some more great news released over the last few days. The replacements have been announced for the World Seniors, and some good picks. Dave Prinz coming in for Kevin Burnett. He was next on the order of merit, so a logical choice. And then replacing Ted Hankey and Richie Burnett is the 4 times women world champion Lisa Ashton, and the bald eagle himself, the very first world match play champion Larry Butler boys. Also, coupled with that, we've got another 2 TV events plus some tour dates for the World Seniors. It is gathering momentum.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's one that I think since they announced the World Seniors Championships, it's one we've spoke about probably weekly on here. The chat room's done mad every time we speak about the seniors. The dropouts that we've had now due to people that in tour cards, the replacements for me are great replacements. It's had to be Dave Prinz as the qualifier in the order of rankings. Made total sense that he stepped in for Kevin Burnett, who obviously won one of the days. And then to have Lisa Ashton, I mean, it's great. And I think the big thing for me, I know it's sooner than the WDF, but what's been very good for me for the World Seniors is the fact that it sounds to me as if there was a plan already there because of how quick this announcement's made. We've had the people who've had to be replaced. That was only on Saturday, and come today, was it this morning or yesterday? They was announced. Within a couple of days, they've got them ready. People know who they don't see, and they are great picks in Larry Butler and Lisa Ashton. I just can't wait for the seniors. You know, Phill, I'm buzzing you every week about something different about the seniors or Dov. I just can't wait for it to start because the names there, sort of, you know, the whole feel about the event, and to have additional tours and to have the opens, to have the match play, all those. It's just going to be an exciting years for the seniors as well as everything else we've got going on. A very busy time as well.
In the chat room, we've got bring back Bob Anderson. Bob's at the World Seniors, practicing away, playing some really, really good stuff. Danny said won't be long until the PDC run a show in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Got to cash in those Arab dollars. World Series has already been to the Middle East, and Barry admitted on the interview that we did with him not so long ago that they were they are in talks to go back to the Middle East. So, no, this year or next year, I'm expecting another World Series event in the Middle East, boys.
Why not?
Well, the more the merrier. The more the merrier.
Look, as Barry said, every other major sport in the world goes there, so why shouldn't darts? Whether that's F1, cricket's now out there in Dubai as well. Boxing's been there, so yeah. The World Seniors.
There's money to be made there, and darts more so than an awful lot of sports. Really, probably a lot of the sports you reeled off there. Darts more so, where you see the money comes into the sport. You can literally watch it filter down into the player, into the players. You know, we see more money come into darts, and we see the prize money go up in tournaments. So, you know, when you do something like that, and you get a World Series event that goes to the Far East, and you get an injection of money, like, you know, make no mistake, that's not getting brown envelope. That you will see players will see a benefit from that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think.
Phil, with that question, you do know you was asking a Geordie about Middle East. There was only going to be a positive answer there, wasn't there, coming from Dan? Let's be honest.
You know, they go in the Middle East. John Joe Shelby's got a wild card.
Sports Direct? No, we can't have that. Public beheading? Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, no. So remember, just
sorry,
before we move on, a couple of ones about the World Seniors in the chatter as well. One of the greatest ever games I ever watched took place in the Dubai final. Gary Anderson and MVG. To this day, still up there with the very, very best of games ever.
Yeah, it's done it for out there, man. I think with the World Series, one thing, that is the one tournament, or tournament, should say, that is the one event that will have a knock-on effect from the Premier League, because I expect the World Series to probably include a few more names in there that we wouldn't probably expect because of now the Premier League being an exclusive sort of 8 and that number reducing. So it does open up there. There is a knock-on from the Premier League in that, and we spoke about it when we was reacting to it. So more the merrier where it goes.
The World Seniors draw will be done in the next couple of days. They were just getting the replacements and all that sorted. So draw is very, very soon. Don't you worry about that. Weekly Darts Cast, 2 questions in here. We'll do them both. Said that's going to be a fun Thursday night, Premier League and the World Seniors. No, it's not, Lau. I can't think of anything worse at the moment. It's going to be horrendous. Don't get me wrong, for the fans watching, it's going to be great. Not for us lot, but that Thursday night's going to be interesting. And we're coming on to that one now as well. Also, news broke as well since we've last had a proper chat that Mad is now merged into the ADC. There was a lot of talk in and around the rebranding, shall we say, and that, and one of them was due to how modern amateur darts had been shortened to Mad. Obviously, Dan, I know you work in care of like kids and stuff like that. That branding something with the title Mad in this day and age isn't the best, shall we say? But also now there is also a clear structure that Steve and the gang have come up with now as well.
Yeah, it just seems like, in all honesty, all it seems to me is that it's sort of 90%. It was like 90% spot on, and it was just some, they've ironed out creases is what it sounds to me. They've ironed out some creases, brought in some slightly different strategy, and then it kicks on from there. It is something that's, in all honesty, a little bit revolutionary. It's very different to anything that's really existed before, and the idea that it's going to get nailed right first time, exactly what we want to see, it is a bit naive, to be honest. I think, I did, just with my sort of general head on of what I have to have on most of the time, you see something branded up like that, when you think, how long before somebody has how long before somebody more, and then it wasn't very long before you see a tweet here and a tweet there. But I think they'll have I think they've just ironed out the creases, and I'm really excited to see what I think. They've got some really good people involved, some really good people, certainly up at my end of the country. They've got, I don't know as many of the guys elsewhere around the country as I do up here, but I think they've got some really good guys on board, and I think they're in for a really interesting year.
Yeah, I like the British Classic element to it as well, and I know it got a lot of flack that it was mainly England based, but when you're booking these dates, that they've obviously had to book venues. No one knew when Jimmy Crankit Sturgeon was going to let Scotland come out and play. Wales have only just lifted restrictions again. So yeah, look, I love the British Classic tour, and look, as Steve said, let's get it right in the hotbeds that we've got, and then we can move out and get it right there, which I really like. And also Steve's bit on the ladies as well, which is really in giving them more opportunities to play. So alongside the amateur darts circuit and the PDC Ladies Series, it's a really exciting time for ladies darts as well.
Yeah, 100%. We've spoke about it numerous times tonight. The opportunities for the players who are have not on the main tour, not on the PDC tour, the opportunities are opened up, and for the ladies, it's certainly one of those. The women's series is extended in PDC. There's these that have opened up. And hopefully what we'll see is, because of the work that Steve's doing with the ladies as well, to that those numbers increased, we'll see that knock on when it comes to the women's series, because we had around 70 entries, I think, for those. We'll see that players are more confident now they're batting these tournaments, and that number will increase. It'll just work up to the pyramid, and it'll be pushing the the Lisas and the Fallons in this world, because as much as we talked about those, it's the players lower down who are going to build it for the Women's Day.
Yeah. The question was, are they still going to have their own World Championships? I would suggest so. I don't know that. I haven't had a chance to speak to Steve properly, because he's obviously been hectic with Q-School and everything, but I presume so. But look, I like it. I think it's good. I think it's vibrant. So fingers crossed that works. Also, boys, WDF are in a sticky situation now after Q-School. We all feared and thought it could be bad, but 7 players will now miss the WDF World Championships, including, more importantly, 5 seeds. That's tough.
It's tough.
Very tough.
I don't know how you just replace those 5 and continue with a draw as it is, because you'll potentially have, I don't know how the 5 fit, but you could have a grouping where you have no seedings playing. I don't know how you can continue with the Worlds being that draw and having so many players replaced, more importantly, so many seeds replaced. If it's the one, then maybe. That's
Lal said it in the chat room there, and I'm there. Laura's just said the same as well. For me, they have to scrap the draw and sort out, obviously, because people are now going to be bumped up into seeding spots, which, if they've done that in the original draw, moving people up into seed spots pretty much messes up every game at some point. So for me, I think the only thing they can do is to redraw it, is to just scrap the draw as it is, sort out who's in what spot, first of all, and completely redraw it.
But Phil, on that point, obviously we've seen the seniors announcement where they've replaced 2 pits with 2 pits, and then the winner of the qualifiers replaced by the Order of Merit winner of the qualifiers. We haven't had anything from the WDF to say that actually the 5 that have been withdrawn from the seedings are going to be replaced by the next 5, and 2 are going to be picked by any other criteria. It's worrying that there's no sort of announcements. We've talked about the reasons of ticket sales and the movement of the tournament and all the sort of effects of that. But I'm concerned.
That's the interesting point as well, because like we know immediately that we've got complications in that from a draw perspective, we've got a draw that we can look at now, and 5 of those seeded players aren't going to be there. They aren't going to turn up. Now that gives you a complication in terms of the logistics of your tournament. Like, that's a challenge. But also, you've lost 5 seeded players to an event you want people to come and buy a ticket for, or have bought a ticket for. That's another challenge. That's not a challenge you can easily overcome. You can find a way to redraw, and you can find a way to concoct a selection process for what these games are going to be. What you can't do is have 5 players that people wanted to come and see. Some of them were, and we've talked about them already today, players who, when they bring their A game, are players you want to watch, and they're not going to be there. And that's a challenge.
That was my next point. The fact that everyone knows, it's common knowledge, all you've got to do is look at the Lakeside website when it tells you what tickets have gone per session. They'd only shifted, I think it was either 14 or 15% of all tickets sold anyway. And then when you lose 5 seeds, that's tough. Is that going to increase ticket sales? No, it's not, unfortunately. You look at it, Brian Roman gone. That if you were a Belgian fan, you're now not going to travel. No, it's unlikely. I'm just saying that if you were a Brian Roman fan and you were coming over from Belgium, you might have bought a ticket for the whole week because you were here. Now you're not. Obviously, Ross Montgomery no longer there. Jules Van Dongen, Nick Fulwell, Cameron Menzies. The list goes on. It's not a great situation to be in if you're trying to sell your tournament. And look, this is, by the way, this isn't the WDF's fault, because Bob Potter set the ticket prices, and he's got it massively wrong. Yeah,
he has.
100%.
He has for me. There's still an opportunity to change that. I guess the way that they can increase the ticket sales is, one, they need to get the announcement of who's going to be in there soon, or what the qualifying criteria is. It's going to be a qualifying event for it. But there's a lot of players now who are eligible to compete in that, who, i.e. Fallon, turned down to play in that. Is there opportunity to go back there? Is there opportunity to speak to Lisa? around the opportunity in the women's side of things to change anything there. They will drive numbers. There's the flit of it for the men's side for the players that are now available. We spoke about someone like Matt Edda. If he's there, he attracts the sort of numbers the fan base is got. So there's opportunities there to increase that. It's what they do with it. Do they invite players? Do they have a qualifying criteria? Do they move people up the rankings? There's all those sort of things.
I tell you what, I've just looked, and I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I didn't look at the ticket prices at all until you mentioned that, Phill. And I'm completely blown away at the ticket prices.
It's horrific. Bob, genuinely.
So,
Bob Potter,
and I don't want to run it down but Thursday night, Thursday evening session. So, I mean, what's Thursday going to be? Quarterfinal? No? Last 16? Cheapest ticket,
on their
£45.
website, we'll tell you.
That's mad. That's mad.
Just an interesting one. I know Lau's in the chat room, and he's a good point there. I just want to be interested in your thoughts on it, Lau. That Fallon gave up her spot at Lakeside because it clashed with Q-School, which I completely understand. She wanted to play on the tour. But when it moved, that reason that she gave it up had now gone. So I don't know. Can they get her back in? I don't know. I don't know if she would, but can they? Lisa, it's a little bit different because she hasn't played any WDF events, so she had no ranking points because she had a tour card for 2 years, so that was a little bit different.
There's just one thing in that, Phill, throwing it up just into the mix we spoke about earlier. The decision around Fallon, if she was to be asked, surely has an impact on potential challenge tours that week, potential Premier League night if she's in the Premier League.
I'm not saying she would, but
if your ticket numbers are where they are, there's certainly someone you should be on the phone to see if you can to be involved, because she will attract interest, especially at the prices that Danny's now shopped at and that we've.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate. She won't be attracting me from Teesside to drag myself down there at those prices.
Yeah. Now, the other one that you asked, so I've just pulled up one day at Lakeside. So it's an all-day session, and it's 82 quid for an all-day session, where the all-day seniors one is 50 quid. 50 quid for the all-day is what I'm looking at. So look, it's going to be interesting. But going back to our original one, that for me the only way out of the WDF is they have to redraw it because of everything that goes on.
Even draw aside, Phill, how would you then replace the 7 players just on the rankings now? Qualifiers, because there's so many players now available who have dropped off the PDC tour who would attract probably more interest than.
Is that your first option? And you could automatically could you seed them automatically?
I'm just going off what the PDC do, and I'm just going off what the PDC do, and that works. So if a seed pulled out of an event, then the next one moves up. So everyone moves up a spot. So for the seeds, I think that's what you have to do is everyone bumps up one. So Thibaut Tricol would become 1, Wayne Warren would go to 2, Neil Duff to 3, James Hurrell to 4, and so on like that. And then I think the rest depends on how they got there. That if it's just an order of merit spot, the next one up. If it's a qualifier, I think that whoever the next qualifier should come in, a bit like the seniors have done personally. So I think it all depends on the route or how the person got there. But the big one, the seeds, you just have to go up one.
Yes, seems fair.
Me.
I just don't know if it brings in the caliber of player that you want that's available to play in those. But if you've earned your right to be on there, then it seems right.
That's the challenge, is it? Is where they've got their players from. You know, and because you know, there's players there that have gone through, you know, they've gone through regional qualifiers and they're ranked in different ways, and then yes, that's great, and then that's how you're doing your draw. But what do you then do with that? And I'm only going, it's the name that's just in my head because we've spoke about him. You know, you bring somebody like a Matt Edgar in, or you bring somebody like that to come. What do you do with them? Because they haven't qualified, they haven't gone through anything like that. You know, it's a real challenge that they're in at the minute, I think.
I'll tell you what, I completely agree. And look, Jared Cole will be happy because hopefully he doesn't get Martin Adams again. Because I fancy, before the draw was done, I fancied both of them to have good runs and they drew each other. But
equally, Martin Adams will be happy as well. Trust me, if he doesn't let Jared Cole in.
Completely.
Yeah, those two are both happy. Draw straight away.
Yeah. Superb. Rose, that is my fault. We are going to announce the seniors tickets tomorrow, and we've got an extra set or extra pair to give away because it's just been manic. So hang with us. It will be coming tomorrow. It's just been absolutely huge. So that is that. Scrap and start over again. Yeah, and we're gonna open up the chat room for general question time. As it is, because you lot have been absolutely superb. I don't think have we missed anything else in the week of darts, boys.
The only thing that I've got down that we haven't mentioned is the return after a year away of the Riley's qualifiers.
Good shout, absolutely. Yeah,
and I know, Dan. I've seen in our chat that Dan's going to be entering. Tam's going to be entering. But
I'm going to play Manchester and Liverpool, and I'm going to get thrashed both times. But when it's on the telly and I'm sat with my lad, I'm going to just tell him how I got knocked out of that tournament earlier. I played in this tournament, so
it's one for me that's key to the UK Open that we have the Riley's qualifiers in. So the announcement was great. The only negatives I saw was that there's none in sort of Scotland and that. But if there's no Riley's venues at the moment, they can't physically hold them there. And I'm sure that's something that.
And also, just on that, lucky enough, we were in dialogue with Riley's about the whole thing. But again, the fact that Wales were still under restrictions when they were trying to book dates are the same as Scotland, that indoor wasn't an option. Is the thing with the UK Open being in March, they had such a small window that it had to be the ones that could host them, unfortunately.
Yeah, just generally for me, it's great that it's back. It has the build up to the UK Open starts when then Riley's qualifiers start coming through. I've already looked at the venues near me, and I've already penned in going to watch one of the events in Coventry. I'll be down to, and for me, it's great that they are back. The names that are going to come through them qualifiers, some we may have heard of, some that have not just missed out on tour cards, and some, you know, maybe names that we've never heard before, like a certain Dan Simpson to get his name on in my head. So who knows? Anything's possible.
The beauty, isn't it? That is the beauty of the qualifier. The biggest challenge for me, Boise, is I am more likely to actually qualify for a spot at Butlins than I am for my missus to give me permission to go. 100%.
Yeah.
Certainly after last time. Certainly after the players.
Weekly Darts goes unexpected, but great news. Yeah, 100%. Interesting one. Don't know what you guys think on this. Philip says, can you see players from other countries travelling over to the UK to play in some of these open qualifiers?
Yes.
I can see. Well, the problem is at the minute traveling anywhere is a complete night. Normally, in normal circumstances, when you can fly from Eastern Europe for 46 quid into Manchester and play one of these qualifiers, then yeah, definitely. But obviously, things aren't working like that at the minute, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Is how easily people can nip into the country for one of these tournaments.
To be fair, I think coming in is now relatively easy again. I think when you go back, I know it's not easy to get in and out of Holland and whatever at the moment. So I think coming in is not an issue. I think it's going home because we pretty much
getting back to work.
Yeah.
I think the key thing for me on that one, Phill, was the weekends out of the land. So looking at the 12th and the 13th and then 19th and the 20th more than the early two weekends, that coming over, you'd have the opportunity to play in a couple of those. You're not going to probably come over and play in the one sort of event like at Nottingham on the 5th. But the fact that you've got a weekend to go and have a go. They are very, very long days. I know that some of them have done late into the night, if not early hours of the morning. But if you get that opportunity, we've seen so many people push on from it. The names that are on the list, Crosswoods, all those sort of players who have now gone on to build fantastic careers in the sports. Just one day, believe it or not, just one day in Coventry can build your career. And that could happen for someone this February.
Great one from Joe here. It says, who is your prediction for someone to gate crash the top 16 by the end of 2022? Who do I? Same for all of you. Who do we think is going to gate crash the top 16?
Callum Ridge.
Yeah, they're not really gate crash picks, but Humphreys is on the cusp of going in. Callum Ridge. If he carries on, I think Dobes is going to have a big year. When you look at his seasonal stats last year, they were very good.
He played well, even getting beat. A lot of the times, he played really, really well getting beat.
Yeah, I think Dobie will have another good year. Just think, is there anyone?
Humphreys, it's very difficult not to see him in there because of his what he's defending going into this year isn't that much. So I can't see Humphreys not being in there. One, I'm not sure he would break into the 16. But I see him being in the late part of the teams potentially next year. He's Ross Smith. I think he could push up and have a good run and be around that. Probably 19th, 20th. Not quite make it into there, but have a good run and run it close. It's then hard to see the players like Rids and Dobie. The lads up north, I know Dan will be happy about, but they're the ones who are probably going to be making that push. Potentially someone like Tim could push around that marker then, but I don't expect him to be in the 16, more just outside it. If we can see some of the performances we saw the back end of the year.
From a purely selfish point of view as well, I think Vincent van der Voort should be wildcard into the top 16, so he's in everything, just because he gives the best post-match interviews ever.
Bulldogs everywhere. We won't have anywhere to play.
Oh yeah, he hates everything and everyone, but it's great. It's great. Mace says Ross Smith as well. A lot of love for Rids. Damon Hetter as well, which is good. Florian Hempel, that's a good shot. Florian Hempel into the top 32. Ross says, yeah, that's a great shout as well. Off the same sort of thing, Philip says, out of the new tour card holders, who do you think will be highest on the order of merit after year one?
Ooh.
I would love it to be Richie Burnett or John O'Shea.
However, it's going to be Mickey Mansell. Is that how you're finishing that sentence?
Yeah, so I think it's young. It's either Ted Everts or Albie John. I think it's over the course of a year. I think it's Everts, probably Ted Everts. I think.
I'm really intrigued to see Connor Scott, just because we saw his game in the Live League was so good. So I'm interested to see, can he take that on tour in the first year? We all know sometimes it takes players a year or so to settle, but I'm interested to see Connor Scott.
He
No, it
was the
says,
one with me, as well as Rafferty. Rafferty, I think, can have a good year.
Yeah. So do you think it was a travesty Everton wait until after Q-School to sack Rafa? He looked like he could be all right on the home tour. Weekly Darts Cast says, will you guys be doing your awards like last year, see if Johnny Clayton can do the clean sweep? We're going to try and do something, mate. We've got a nice little plan sorted out. It's whether we've got time to do it or not, because it involves us making practice of ourselves as well. So, yeah, I just want to see Boise in a tux.
Is it?
I just want to see Boise in a tux. But we are going to try, yes. Now that it's settled down a little bit. Wales restrictions end on the 28th. Yeah, they do now, Mace. Yeah, which is good because that means Cardiff is a goer. Connor says Willie O'Connor for the top 32. I wouldn't count it out. The Magpie played some good stuff at the Worlds. Has the game to do it. Rafferty will do some damage.
Yeah.
Which will be good. Remember, questions, we've got about another 5 minutes or so to keep them coming in. Brock says, Phil, what is your opinion on darts coaching? We've said it for a long time that I think it's a must in the sport now, where you look at other sports like golf and everything like that. Darts is a sport where you can't see what you're doing. If something's slightly out, slightly too high, you can't see it as a player. So I think a second pair of eyes is always a good thing, boys. And I think coaching's a good thing. And I look at what Nico has done for Bradley Brooks over the last year. It's been really, really good. I don't know what you boys think on it.
I just think that there's more to coaching and more to having a coach than people think. There's more to a coach and what a coach offers a player than just helping them throw the dart straighter. There's lots of other things that a good coach will help a player. We've seen this a lot. We've seen this for years in snooker, probably before we saw it in darts. And I think the more the years go on, the more we see. And I think what we need, if anything, is we probably need more coaches, more good coaches in darts, and more people that start to think that it's a viable source of income. We've talked earlier on about how lucrative this year is for those who have fallen away from having a tour card and what their options are. And they've got more options than ever in terms of tournaments and things. But people who aren't playing on the dart circuit anymore still clearly could have lots and lots of other things to offer. Coaching, just one of them. The more of them that go into coaching, the less of them setting up YouTube channels that we have to compete with, isn't
it? Yeah. Henry says, if you could make a new TV event up for 2022, what would it be and why? This is easy for me. You two can think quickly, but I'd either have a version of the Ryder Cup or the Moscone Cup, something along those lines. Whether for me.
So I'm on the Ryder Cup. The only other one is a Snooter did it, I think, with a one-lead sort of tournament.
Oh, the shootout type thing.
Yeah, shootout type. One lead, 1001 lead, 64 players maybe, toss the die, or some in that sort of format. I'd like to say. Once then, it's just around. It's about entertainment for someone like that, and for me, I'd be all
I've
for
never
that.
I've never spoken to anyone ever that disagrees with the Ryder Cup idea. I've never met another person that disagrees with the Ryder Cup idea in pretty much any sport, certainly darts. The other thing I would give as somewhat different to that hasn't been mentioned yet is I really, really, really want to see a televised cricket tournament. Really want to see televised cricket.
Just not the Ashes.
Oh God, no, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, that would be it for me. Couple of ones. It says when we go to New York, you're just doing the darts. No, I'm gonna fly in on the Monday or Tuesday, mate. Love NYC. Good one here. Brock says, what about Andy Hampton and Rafferty over the weekend? Look, Andy got a bit upset when he lost. Did a few things he regrets and everything. But the next day, he went over and apologised to Nathan, apologised to Matt as well, more than once. So, look, things happen in the heat of the moment in competitive sport. It happens. But the next day, fully apologetic, error of his ways. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, one in there as well, Phil, just mentioned. Jamie Durrance mentioned the full-on doubles tomp. That don't need to be invented as something new. Just change the World Cup as it is to a doubles tomp. That's that one sorted.
I'm loving how much people are getting behind cricket, though. I'm well into this. This is mint.
Yeah.
Most things people don't understand the rules, but it just gives us all opportunity to talk about it more. We need some. Mace would be perfect for doing instructional cricket videos. That'd be amazing.
To be fair, I just want to see someone throw a dart, look at George Noble and go, Zaza! Can you imagine the Noble finger? Everyone, that brings to a close the live lounge for this evening. What an unbelievable show it's been. Chat room has been on fire. Give yourselves a round of applause, everyone. You have absolutely rocked it today. It's all good. The live lounge will return next week. We've got a couple of interviews coming up for you as well. We'll have a Masters preview coming up. The podcast will be live tomorrow night as well. Once I've ripped it off of YouTube and topped and tailed it, it will be out as audio only, so you can listen along as well. Really enjoyed tonight. Dan, absolute pleasure to have you on. Boise, it's been superb. No Tungsten Toff tonight because he is out celebrating his birthday. So we have had to do, but it's been superb. We have been Online Darts for the last time. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and we will see you all very, very soon.